Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, France boasts one of the world's highest percentage of women in uniform, yet the country still lags behind when it comes to addressing sexual assault and harassment in the military, according to female ex-soldiers. Also, the rise of the Tradwife. We take a look at the women influencers extolling the virtues of staying at home while yielding to their husbands. But is there a more sinister element behind the trend? I'll be asking internet researcher Cecile Simmons. But first, and as we've reported on this show before, sexual violence and harassment are sadly all too common in a military environment for female personnel across the world. Over a decade ago, a helpline was set up for soldiers here in France to report on incidences of such behaviour. Yet, as some women tell our colleagues at France 2, their voices are still not being heard.
They decided to break rank, to break their silence. French female soldiers daring to expose the attacks they suffered in the army and defy the code of silence.
What gave me the resolve and the courage was the tears of my comrades and the silence that we all kept.
The victims are being pushed aside, not those responsible. I'm the one who had to leave the boat while he's still there.
These women wanted to serve France, but ended up leaving the military shattered. Manon Dubois was just 18 years old when she joined the Marines. She boarded a boat off France's western coast and started working in the kitchen. She became the prey of another soldier.
He locked me in my kitchen and pushed me up against the countertop. He pressed his genitals against me and touched me in the places you aren't supposed to touch a woman. He told me that I was his thing and that I would always belong to him. I was frozen. I couldn't react during the attack or run away. I detached from myself.
She says he attacked her around 60 times. She finally broke down and filed a complaint. He received a 10-day layoff and paid her 600 euros in damages, but remained a sailor. She was no longer safe on the boat.
It's my whole life. I wasn't able to pursue the career that I wanted because of this man. It's painful because I will always miss the military.
A double penalty. This was also the case with Ninon Maté. She was at the top of her class and on the verge of suicide at 23 years old.
Physically and mentally, he took everything from me. He wrung me out. I would wake up in the morning, and the first thing in my head was jump out the window.
She says she was assaulted by her direct superior. Other women also filed complaints, but nothing happened. Meanwhile, she continued to do her work each day under the triumphant watch of her abuser.
I filed 4 complaints for assault, harassment, and rape. And 2.5 months later, he was promoted. I never got a response from the head of my division. Everyone stays silent in the face of these events that happen every day in the army.
A helpline was created 10 years ago so soldiers could report sexual violence, but the head of it knows there is still a long way to go.
Additional measures could be taken to isolate the accused aggressor so there is no contact between them and the presumed victim.
700 people contacted the helpline last year, resulting in around 50 disciplinary actions.
Now, have you ever heard of a Tradwife? It's internet shorthand for a traditional wife and has been adopted by a whole subculture of women. They proudly declare on social media how they're stay-at-home mothers and wives, replicating the era of the 1950s housewife. And it's buzzing online with the topic reaching over 300 million views on TikTok. Here's a selection of some of the so-called Tradwives out there.
How to become a traditional wife. Number 1, embracing ultra-traditional gender roles into your marriage. The man, he is the provider, the main breadwinner. He goes out of the house and works. The woman, the wife, she is the homemaker. She takes care of the home. She takes care of herself, and she does the cooking and the cleaning.
You'll always be my home, my heart.
For me, embracing my feminine role, embracing my womanhood, embracing being a mom has brought me so much more joy and fulfillment than any other career could have.
I'm a savage, classy, bougie, ratchet, sassy, moody, nasty, yeah.
Cecile Simmons is a research manager for the London-based Institute for Strategic Dialogue and a specialist on gender equality issues in the online world. She joins me in the studio today. Cecile, thank you so much for your time. Why did you start researching the subject of tradwives?
I've been following the tradwives ever since they emerged on internet forums about a decade ago. But I always thought of that movement as being quite discreet and quite niche. And of course, what we have seen since the pandemic is that this movement has become mainstream because it's promoted by popular influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers. But what happened to me is that the tradwives made it onto my social media feed. I became a mother, and naturally, social media algorithms started showing me that content. And I became interested in knowing what will happen if you start engaging with it.
So what was your reaction when you first clicked on this sort of tradwife content online?
I thought that actually the tradwives were quite compelling, and I think that a lot of women say that watching that sort of content, including feminist women, will say that it's quite appealing and it's quite addictive. And of course, we know what social media algorithms do. Once you click on something, they will recommend you more of the same as well as more extreme versions of the same to keep you engaged in browsing. And so it can become quite addictive to look at.
The move originated in the US. It's now spread to other parts of the English-speaking world. Is it gaining popularity here in Europe as well?
It is absolutely gaining popularity across different countries in Europe, including in France. But it is very much, it started as an English-speaking movement, and it is still more popular in the US and in the UK.
Given the very strong anti-feminist views, are these individuals linked to the far-right or white supremacist movements?
I think that it's very easy to forget the roots of the movement. The movement started as a counterpoint to the manosphere, the misogynistic online communities led by men. And it's a movement that really works in tandem with the manosphere because it's a movement that promotes submission to men as well as for women to give up their financial and social independence. It is also a movement that has strong links to the far right. Not all tradwives are far right, but some of them are, and some of them will promote or will link or will share books, podcasts, videos by far right, neo-Nazi extremist influences. And so once you start clicking on some of that content, you will be quickly led to more extreme ideological content.
It's said that over 300 million people have viewed such clips on TikTok. How do you explain its popularity?
I think the tradwives really speak to women's frustrations. What they will say is that feminism has failed women. And that's why they're anti-feminists. And I think that there is a big misconception, which is that feminism has always promised women that they could have it all. And I think that post-pandemic, women can really say that maybe their lives aren't quite what they would expect today. And so it's easy to pin the blame on feminism and say that women would be a lot more relaxed if they gave up their careers and focused on domesticity. They would be less burnt out. And we know that burnout is a gendered issue. Women are more likely to be burnt out.
Cecile, should we be worried about this trend, especially when you take into account the rise of so-called man influencers such as Andrew Tate? Is it all part of this global backlash against women's rights?
I think we should absolutely be worried. What worries me particularly about the tradwife movement is that it encourages women to give up their financial independence and to submit to their husbands. And I think that can really encourage a rise in domestic abuse and sexual violence. And we tend to forget that because these popular influencers romanticize what they imagine life was like in the 1950s. But I'm really concerned about what this can do in terms of domestic violence and violence against women.
And social media plays such a large part in all of this, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that once you start engaging with this content, you really see how the algorithms drive you to more extreme content. And then you can encounter, private groups of tradwives, or you have tradwives who start contacting you. So you can really see that there's a movement towards radicalization that preys on women's dissatisfaction. And that is very dangerous indeed.
Cecile Simmons, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. So do reach out with your suggestions via Facebook, Instagram or X. So until the next show, bye for now.